class, welcome back for our second day. Appreciate everything that you guys did for our first class, the interaction that you had. You guys had wonderful interaction on our discussion board that was just reflecting on our first day of class. So today we're going to move from philosophical orientation and beliefs that we have about the world, ourselves, and others, and we're going to start looking at specific ways that you can ground yourselves in theory before you go out and start doing counseling. So, before we dive into counseling specifically, and the importance of being grounded in counseling, I wanted to take some time and just address how each of us maybe have different talents, maybe other than counseling, and its value in being grounded. So, I was wondering if some of the class would be willing to talk about some of their secondary talents that they might have, and if being grounded in that talent, maybe before you became an expert in it, was important.
Would music count?
Yeah, music would be great. Okay, so music would be a secondary talent of yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah? So, when you started in music, were there specific strategies you used to be grounded in it?
What do you mean grounded? Like,
well, like as far as like, a baseline.
Like how I learned it? And
yeah, because would you, who's your favorite artist?
Right now, probably, I'm a lot into Matt Maher.
Matt Maher, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if Matt Maher was your favorite artist, would you just be able to go and start playing some of Matt Maher's songs?
I wish.
Okay.
No, I had to, definitely just start with basic books, learning single notes at a time,
Okay.
and then kind of building off of that. And like one of my strengths was listening to music and figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I just listened to a lot of music and tried to work it out as best I could, along with those rudimentary books that my parents taught me.
Okay. Yeah, so reading books, maybe doing scales, like to kind of give you an idea of how to move up and down the scales of the guitar.
Yeah.
Okay. Pilar, would you have anything to add to that?
I guess my secondary talent would be teaching. And when I first started out, I really modeled myself after teachers that I really learned from when I was in school, and I thought about what made me remember things, what worked for me and how I learned best, and I tried to model that in my classroom.
Okay, so kind of like a self-reflection of what helped you most, and then you wanted to emulate that.
Yep.
Okay, very cool. So you talked a little bit about how important it was, just even in these secondary talents, for you guys to ground yourselves, to kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do before you just jumped in and said, hey, I'm going to be a teacher, or hey, I'm going to be a musician. You had to have an idea of these are the steps I need to take in order to get to that point. So for today, our learning outcomes are going to be selecting statements that closely resemble your worldview, values, and life philosophy as it relates to counseling theories, and then to analyze how that identified theory fits or comes in conflict with your identified worldview, values, and life philosophy. As far as succeeding, I talked about this a little bit in last class. I'm very passionate about theories, making sure that as students you feel grounded. One of the things that we're going to talk about in a couple slides here is one of the journal articles that's required readings for this course speaks to the importance of being grounded, and so we're going to cover that a little bit. I want to make myself as available as possible. At the end we're going to have time for questions or comments if there is anything that was presented that wasn't maybe very clear. And then the one big thing, every time that we have a class together, I want you guys to come up with something at the end of class that's maybe like your main takeaway. Something that you think would be beneficial, whether it intersects with your personal life, whether it's with your professional life, maybe it's with those secondary talents that you had discussed. We want to try and identify one thing that you think would be incredibly beneficial moving forward. So I'd like you to keep an eye on that. So coming into today, I wanted you to read the article by Petco, Kendrick, and Young. And then after class today, I'll be posting on discussion board the prompt for a personal journal. So, reviewing of last class, Petco, Kendrick, and Young identified that theory influences feelings of confidence and competence and bridges the gap between research and practice and encourages flexibility. So if we go into sessions with our clients and we're coming up with a really overwhelming case, maybe someone who's incredibly depressed and suicidal, and we just feel completely overwhelmed, the value of having a theory is that it's going to provide confidence and competence in how are we conceptualizing their problems, how are we conceptualizing what brought them there, and then that's going to influence how we then interact with it. So last time we did a self-reflection activity that went through these questions of what is the nature of the person, before anyone had any influence, who were you and what did you have? How did you come into the world? What is the nature of personality development? What made you who you are today? What is the nature of maladjustment or negative behaviors or negative interactions? How did it happen that you got to that point? And how did you get messed up on the way to becoming who you are today? Because I can't really think of a person who has made it through life without getting influenced negatively by something in their lives. So it's important that we reflect on that, and because we reflected on that in last class, that is going to then influence what we are going to be doing today. So we're going to be going through the selective theory sorter revised. So as you can see on there, you're going to be reading statements that indicate the strength of beliefs in the white box. And so this is going to be the form that you guys are going to be going through. That is yours.
You need pencils.
Yes, I will grab some for you guys. So what is going to be happening with this is you're going to be evaluating what specific theory that you align with the most. And so in each of these white boxes, someone gets a highlighter, sorry. Each of these white boxes are going to indicate what you believe. And so in those gray boxes, don't worry about that. But in the white box, you're going to indicate how much that aligns with your personal beliefs. So the example one that you have on your sheet and up on the screen is that people are sexual beings. And so what you're going to be doing is taking a look at how much you believe that. So the example in here that someone said that's a lot like me, that's something that they highly believe. Whereas that might not align with you at all, or you might be neutral on it. So I'm just going to ask that you guys take some time, go through those questions. As you're going through those white boxes, if you do have questions or clarifications on what they're asking, do not hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, go ahead and get started.
So like we fill in the number in the white space.
You got it? Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So as you guys get to the end, you're going to notice at the bottom is a whole bunch of white boxes, and then you're just going to total each column for those boxes, and then underneath that is a list of all the theories that correspond with those boxes.
I didn't sign up to do math.
I'm sorry?
I didn't sign up to do math.
That really isn't, I guess, typically a strong suit of all the counselors, I guess, but I'll help you if you need.
Can't promise it's going to be accurate, but
Alright, let's see if we can get this down the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay,
Does that sound possible?
probably.
I can do it.
Okay.
I think so.
Just need to add really fast.
Okay. once you have reached that point of identifying your total scores for each of the theories, what I'd like you guys to do is just take a minute or two and really those top 3 theories, identify which ones you align with the most, especially like with the top 1 or 2, maybe going back to some of those criteria that you ranked the highest, that you maybe aligned with the most. And then thinking about how that your upbringing and life experiences maybe influence those scores. And then after you've done that, we're going to have a couple minutes for you guys just to talk together, and then we're going to share as a class, and then we'll be wrapping it up.
I had a tie for 3rd.
Ooh.
With 3.
With the total score of 3?
Well, no. For 3rd place, I had 3 with the same score.
Okay. So I guess we'll focus on the top 2.
Okay, that sounds good.
2 special.
Is there like definitions of these?
So each of those criteria that you guys circle the most aligned with are like considered like the core constructs associated with each of the theories. So that was one of the reasons why, when you get that top theory, chances are, maybe not for all of them, but probably for maybe 5 or 6 different theories, there's probably going to be a 3 for 5 or 6 of them. Just because there's different aspects that each of us are going to align with, but there's going to be one that's going to be predominantly highly rated. So in the next like 2-ish, 3-ish minutes here, Pilar, would you talk about like the top 3 theories you had and maybe some of the things that stood out to you the most?
Okay, the top one I had, and they were all only separated by 1 point,
Okay.
Was Gestalt.
Okay.
And then the second one was individual psychology, and the third one was cognitive behavioral.
Good.
And when I went back and I looked, I agreed with almost every single one. Like I'd give like a 3 or a 2 for all the ones in the Gestalt column. So I feel like, and I read over them, and I feel like that's a pretty good indicator of what I believe and what my beliefs are. And
was there maybe one or 2 criteria that maybe stood out to you more than the other ones?
You mean from that individual column?
Yeah.
There was a few. There was, where is it? There was one. One of them, it said gender is an important dynamic in the counseling relationship, and I definitely think that plays a huge role in the counseling relationship, just based on what that person's past might have said, might have happened in their past. That could be a huge indicator.
Good.
Another one that I thought was interesting was the idea that everybody is unique and that there is no set mold that will fit every single person.
Yeah.
You can't just take it to the same person over and over again. It's not going to work that way.
Good.
And what was another one? And something else from one of the other columns that I did pretty well on was the one that said how family, I can't find it, but it was about how family is a big indicator and how we define ourselves, and I can't seem to find it.
Yeah.
It's in there somewhere, but another one, it was talking about how our immediate family plays a big role in how we perceive ourselves and how we define ourselves.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, and so one of the main, I guess, reasons for this tool and this exercise, this doesn't mean that this would be your theoretical orientation. I'm not going to go through like my scores and my theoretical orientation because I don't want to influence you guys as students, but our life experiences even influence how we read some of these questions, and so how we even respond to these questions might be influenced by our own life experiences, which inherently then changes the scores. So I don't want you guys to leave today saying, you know, like, I'm stoked. Like, that is not what I'm looking for today, but to build off what we did in last class, it's really identifying where are places that you lean to the most, and then continuing to develop some awareness and understanding of that particular theory. Now, as we move forward in this course, we're going to get more specific into some of these theories, and that'll maybe provide some additional insight and information that'll be helpful for you. But other than that, like, again, I just want to be very cautious in saying, do not leave here saying, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. But it just kind of gives you an idea. John, did you have any quick thoughts as far as yours?
Yeah, I had person-centered
Okay.
as one of my top. My top one was Gestalt, I guess that's how you say it, as well as hers. But I really kind of felt more towards person-centered, just because a lot of those questions had to do with like people or individuals, kind of finding the individual potential in people and what they're specifically going through. And yeah, I can kind of already start to see how that is like how I was raised, kind of being an influence on how I answer those questions. But that was very interesting.
Yeah. And that really, I think, can be difficult for counselors as well to sometimes differentiate with, just because person-centered, like when we think about like counseling techniques of just being available for clients, some of the core counseling techniques that we use, like summarizing and paraphrasing and reflecting content back to clients, is inherently person-centered. And so being able to distinguish that from the counselor identity and the theoretical orientation can sometimes be difficult, but that's really, really cool. So the one big thing, like when you guys look maybe at this exercise or some of the things we had talked about before that, just a quick, maybe like 10, 15 second summary, one big thing that you guys think would be helpful to take from today.
I think it gave me more of an understanding of why I think the way I think, because I think you made a point of saying, you know, even like how we answered the questions and how we interpret what the question is saying is really a big part of, you know, our individual theory, because each person might read a question differently. So that's a big one I took from it, and just a reminder that, you know, everybody is unique, and counseling is not something you can just put in a box and say one size fits all.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. Just having that underlying knowledge of, I think, like, because of the way I was grown up, will help me to think about that in the future. It's like, why am I doing these things? Like, why am I perceiving maybe this client in this way? It might be because I was grown up a certain way. So just to kind of maybe dive into that a little bit more will definitely help out in the future. So that was a big takeaway.
Very cool. And that's even, you know, when we think about how we interact as professor and student, with other students, with coworkers, you know, how we interact with each other. We're going to talk a little bit about that in one of the following lectures or class periods, is how like this can be generalized to all of our social interactions, whether it's in the professional counseling room or just with our family members or friends. So appreciate your guys' time. Please look for the discussion board journal prompt following class. Did you have any questions for me right now?
I don't think so.
I'm good.
All right. Well, please feel free to email, and I'll see you guys next class.
All right.